Welcome to the Flower Prophecies, a podcast exploring all things flower essences and remedies and flower therapy, and how this vibrational plant medicine has the potential to heal and shift our individual and collective health and consciousness. We'll be diving deep into the specifics of individual essences, nature's energetics, emotional healing and growth, as well as hearing client case studies, hosting special guests and professionals, and I'll be sharing my own personal explorations and philosophies channeled straight from the flowers. Through my own unearthing, I have discovered what I believe to be the most profound teaching of the flowers, and I now wish to share with you the practice of alchemizing fear into beauty. Before we begin today, I wanted to talk to you about my relational resonance sessions. These are my flower therapy one-on-one deep dives into where you are out of resonance within the relationships in your life and in your foundational relationship with self. So together with the flowers, we will unearth and observe the deeper emotional aspects that are playing into any current disharmony or stagnancy you are experiencing. Throughout the session, I will be offering emotional guidance and support and an intuitively guided reflection of your holistic experience, allowing for new perspectives and awareness to be found, as well as sharing insights from the flowers themselves. So it is my intention to offer a safe space in which you feel seen and heard, as well as energetic tools and tangible practices to heal and grow from this place. And from here, you can choose to add a custom remedy to your session, which we will co-create together, and you will be given all of the remedy insights and details so that you can work with the remedy on a really deep level. Soon to launch are my relational resonance packages. So these are packages that have been curated as your own self-guided flower therapy journey through 3 consecutive flower remedies created for a specific relational realm. You will unearth the energetic blocks, belief systems, and behaviors so that you can heal and up-level this area of your life. So these will come with pre-recorded videos to accompany them, detailing how to integrate the specific medicine for enhanced transformation, as well as emotional guidance tools and techniques. These remedy packages will be in the realms of nature, kin, intimate, friendship, and calling, and they will all have the foundation of your relationship to self. These packages will be available soon and can be utilized in conjunction with my relational resonance for enhanced healing and unearthings. For now, my sessions and custom remedies can be found on my website at hekahealing.com.au, and you can also sign up to be notified as soon as the remedy packages are available. All right, so welcome back to the Flower Prophecies, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we have a very special guest that I am honored to have on, Ruth Toledo Altschuler is a flower essence practitioner of 30 years, beginning her career in this field shortly after the second wave of flower essences were established in the 70s and 80s. Originally from Brazil, Ruth became a founding elder of the practice there, where she helped develop the practice, study, and the implementation of the flowers throughout. Ruth now dedicates her time to mentoring others, educating and sharing her deep well of knowledge and mostly her passion within this field. Ruth, welcome to the Flower Prophecies.
Wow, it's a joy to be here and to be speaking to your people. Yes.
Yay. Yes, I think everyone is just going to be so grateful to hear some of your wisdom and experiences and insight into the flowers. So I'd love to dive right in and start from the very beginning. And if you can share with us how it is that you first connected with this practice and your initial interactions with the flowers as well.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this when I read your questions. And one thing was that I had been in a real strong draw towards knowing about plants and discovering the plant world. Um, while I was bringing up my kids, and I had a different business that was close to home um, for that purpose. And at that time, I was blessed by having the parents of the father of my kids were a couple that both of them knew a lot about plants. She was a landscape designer and she knew everything about this plant really likes sun or this or that. And he was very interested in herbal medicine and had this incredible library. And so I was just kind of taking in everything I could and asking, especially from her, asking all the questions I had. And during this time, I used to travel because I had a clothes designing business. I had my own small business, and I would travel to get some inspiration, and I would travel to Europe, but I would always choose the springtime. Mm. And then I would go to all these parks full of flowering trees and, flower beds and all of that. And I couldn't do anything but take pictures of the flowers. So the flowers were calling. And it was in one of those trips that I got as a gift the brochure of Dr. Boss. And right after I started reading one of the books about the Bach flower remedies. And this really called me because in the background, there was this story of having watched my father died from cancer really young. He was 54. And I always felt there could have been things that could have helped him process what he had gone through in his life. But, even though I had come from a family where my grandfather was a pathologist, I didn't want to learn about disease. My path was so much about cultivating wellness and cultivating sanity. That was what I was after and had been after for quite some time. So this kind of, it was like when I met the flowers, it was almost like the flower essences. It was everything that I had been searching for, and I just couldn't help but dive in. And my enthusiasm was so great that people started coming to me that I would say, there's an essence just so good for this that you just told me. And so it started there.
Wow, that's amazing. I had a little giggle because when I said to you before we were speaking that I was in a different career, it was in fashion design as well. That's so funny. Oh, that's beautiful. And so you began over there in Brazil. And how long did you stay over there for doing flower essences?
Oh, quite a long time, 20 something years. And also when I married my present husband, who's American, I spent 15 years going back and forth and continuing to work with my clients there and continuing having a business there. And so it's been only since 2015 that I stopped doing all this traveling. So it was, a long journey in my work there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's a very good effort. Very good effort.
Yeah, and what happened was I was probably in the right place at the right time to have become someone who became a bridge between many lines of research of flower essences and the Brazilians. And so I played this very incredible role because it came to me and I was the one to be the go-between, bringing these essences and bringing these teachers to teach in Brazil.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really beautiful. And that's something I wanted to talk to you about as well, because so, when this second wave of flower essences sort of came about in the 70s and 80s, and all of these, I've spoken to this on the podcast before, but all of these individuals across the world sort of kind of were called to work with the flowers, not knowing that each other across the world were as well, and creating, these companies and these movements, basically. Brazil, obviously, from your experience, Brazil was very open to the practice of flower essences from what I understand. And they've implemented quite a lot. And I guess that's with your help as well, a lot of your work involved in that. They've implemented quite a lot, but also been very open to using them widely. And that's not very common elsewhere across the world, I don't think. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on why you think Brazil has this in general, has this sort of different sort of connection to flower essences and openness. Yeah.
Yeah, well, in 1991, there was a conference in Australia, in Sydney, organized by the two major Australian companies. And I was invited to give a little talk. And the theme of my talk was because the theme of the conference was ancient tradition and modern healing, I think it was.
Yeah.
And so I went to research what could be part of the Brazilian culture that made it so receptive. And one of the things that I did was I interviewed someone who was a major figure in the Afro-Brazilian traditions about the role of flowers in those rituals. And one of the things that we have in our history, we unfortunately do have the deep wound and the suffering around slavery. But one of the differences there was there, which was different from many of the Spanish colonies as well as in the United States, was that people were the slaves, and the people coming from Africa, they still held their traditions and their rituals. And there was also some kind of affection bond that happened between, like, the nannies and the children, the people who became somehow part of the families as well.
Yeah.
And there was more of a human connection and more of a blend of those cultures in a way that when the families of the white settlers couldn't resolve a certain problem, they would ask their people who brought these traditions, do you have something that can help? And I think that stayed on to this day, because so many of these rituals and Afro-Brazilian practices and religions have become mainstream and are part of the culture and are practiced by a multiracial part of the population. Yeah. And so I think this is one of the things. It's so embedded in the culture to have, like, oh, take a bath with this plant and this will help discharge the spell of a situation that happened. And that is something that everybody believes in it. It's part of their lives.
Wow, that's so interesting. And I guess it does reflect, because you see in all of our other countries and things how the people up in higher places don't necessarily go to the commoner to see what their opinions are, or if they have any sort of anything to add or anything to contribute. So That's really cool. I love that. I love hearing that. And
So a bit of that magic, a bit of these rituals, and with the flowers, they did a lot of baths, and they would put the flowers in the moonlight and then in the sun, and they would take baths. So
and it's funny because it's just like the more that you do that, the more it's going to enhance that connection and that sort of oneness between all of the hierarchy, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
beautiful. I really love hearing that.
Mhm.
Cool. So I would love to hear then one of you, if you'd be open to sharing, I'd love to hear, if you have a really memorable experience within your life of, working with the essences themselves, and if there's something that jumps out to you in particular that you'd like to sort of share. I love asking guests this because especially when they've worked with flower essences for so long. I just love the synchronicities and the experiences that they can add into our lives. So I think it's really interesting to hear everyone's different sort of unique experiences with them.
Yeah, and I don't know, you may have heard me tell this story before, but this was really so striking. It was my first experience with the Bach flower remedies. It was my first flower remedy. And at that time, I didn't know about chakras and energy and these things. I was still very new to all of this. And yet, I was on a quest of wanting to become a better person. And one thing that I noticed about myself was that I was not so open to hearing. Sometimes I was just impatient and I didn't really listen to people and I wouldn't let them finish the sentence. And there was specifically one person whom I would meet on a frequent basis. And I wasn't very interested in what she had to say. And I didn't like the fact that I wouldn't listen to her. I disliked myself in that. And so when I read about the Bach flower remedies, impatience just jumped out at me and said, oh, yes. I couldn't wait to take it. And so when I received my first kit, a woman brought it over who came visiting me from Europe. And I took the impatience, and something so striking happened. It was odd because, only after I could understand. One of the things was that it was almost like something uncorked from my throat and from my upper head. And there was this freshness and this sense of something had unplugged. And I could breathe more deeply, but also I was beginning to learn to listen and to not be so quick in. I still am, there's some things, but to not be so quick in jumping with the answer or, oh no, I know where you're getting to. And it was so amazing to feel the experience so vividly. I never had quite, a remarkable experience like that after. Most of my experiences with the essences do involve feeling a shift in energy, but a bit more gradual. This was the most striking one ever. Yeah.
Wow,
And the
I love
first,
that.
yeah.
And reflecting on that, can you kind of decipher what it was that was like the energy that was unplugging from you?
Yeah. I think it had to do with the throat chakra also being one for listening, not only for speaking. And for this ability to let myself hear first,
I like
but also this perhaps this higher connection with my spiritual self.
Yes. Yeah. Beautiful.
And at the time, I didn't have a clue about any of these things. So it was like, whoa, and then I started learning. So
Yeah.
it was,
When I took my very first essence that I created intentionally, after I had begun studying them, I had also a very visceral response to it. And I almost, it was I actually was sick, but I also had this, and I've been thinking about it lately. I also had this, I almost heard like a fluid rush up the back of my head. And it's kind of that same thing, right? That opening of the crown, of like that connection to your higher self. And I literally heard it rush up the back and felt it rush up the back of my head, like inside me. And it was so, it was so visceral, and it was so profound. Like I won't ever forget it. It's amazing what they can do.
what plant was it?
So that was two combined. It was turkey bush, and it was dagger hakea. So a very powerful one.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
And it was super interesting, that experience. And reflecting on it, I think it's like, and I'm sure you can resonate, it's almost like showing us that this is how powerful it is, before we begin working with it. This is how powerful it is. So we're really like aware and not kind of questioning, oh, is this doing something? Is it not? We just know, right? Beautiful, beautiful. So you have worked really closely with a lot of the really prominent figures in the flower essence world, in many different countries, and in the conferences as well, especially back when it all first began. I would love to hear from you, I guess, what is one or two of the teachings that you've taken on board most from those mentors and those figures in the industry?
Yeah, I was reflecting about that when I read your questions, and I would say the main thing that also is something that I would like to encourage everyone to study with these teachers is that they have established a connection with each one of the plants that they talk about.
Mm-hmm.
That is a living connection, and that brings through the intelligence of that plant. And so when we hear them talk and tell the story, and when we are in the presence, or even, I think that also happens through other ways like Zoom as well these days. What happens is we resonate with that, and that comes alive within us. And so it's been precious to learn with Ian White and hear him talk about a certain plant, to learn with Steve Johnson and feel him bringing the elemental energies of certain environmental essences, or the plants themselves, and the plants themselves, and all of them, including Julian Barnard, who has been working for so long with the Bach remedies and studies and is so intimate with these plants. So this is the most precious gift. I never miss an opportunity of being and watching lectures and being present. Just last week, Richard and Patricia were teaching to the Brazilians, the FES researchers. And there I was, listening to them. And again, kind of taking in the precious living insights about the plants and bringing in the presence of these plants through the way that they communicate.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And then you mentioned in there as well from the flowers themselves. I wonder if you would like to share what personally I gain a lot of information directly from the flowers themselves, and I can see within the way that you talk and the way that you express that you do as well. And I'd love to hear what some of the more profound teachings you've received from the flowers have been that stick with you.
Yeah, well, I would say that every time I go deeper into being with a plant, being with a flower, even while I'm preparing a presentation or studying or working with a client and wanting to understand the fine resonance of why that essence is coming up for them. Mm-hmm. There's a deepening in connecting with that plant. But I'll tell just this little story. There was one time that we were in Alaska, and I was in this drive with Steve and Jane. We were coming back from a location that we had stayed. And we were on this road in the middle of, it was an area where there's only snow and nothing else during a big part of the year. And then we were driving on this road that now was clear of snow. And they said, "Oh, I think it's here." And they stopped and they went over the bank of the road and we climbed, and then we went into this area that was kind of covered in trees. And there they were, the northern lady slipper orchids. These are terrestrial orchids of a gentleness that I had never seen before. And Steve Johnson, he was an amazing photographer, and he would sit there and spend a long time taking one shot, whereas, I was quite different, but there were so many mosquitoes. We had to wear mosquito nets and gloves and everything. And being in the presence of these orchids, it was really being held in gentleness to a degree that I can't remember experiencing. It was being suspended in pure gentleness. It was really a beautiful, sublime experience. Yeah. And this helped me, it continues to help me understand when this is an essence that somebody needs for different reasons and processes in their journey. This ability to feel totally held in that absolute gentleness.
It's really beautiful, and I can feel it right now. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. I love that. It's really interesting, isn't it, when there's specific flowers that we come across that have just such a powerful influence and on how we experience them, and how it just stays with you for so long, and how that one experience can help so many others because you understand that flower on a deeper level. You know, you have that deeper relationship and connection with that flower, and it has aided you in all of the clients that you've been able to offer that to as well.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. I would love, well, I guess it's the perfect sort of segue into my next question, which is I'd love to hear your thoughts on the role that flower essences play in expanding our consciousness. And that in itself, right, is expanding our consciousness, knowing that there's that specific energy that we can embody in any moment, and being able to share that piece of information with so many other people, you know, and just the reminder that we have that ability within each moment to embody that. And so that in itself is, you know, expanding our consciousness, right? And what it is that we're capable of doing in each moment. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the role that the flower essences play overall in expanding our consciousness.
You know, in the work that I've been doing over the decades, a lot of it begins in going deep into the areas that need to be held in healing, and into where there are elements that are kind of holding us into places of pain, and holding us captive to also ancestral pain, and traumas that we don't even remember. And in that way, it's almost like they illumine and reconnect these abandoned places, or these split off places within ourselves. And so in that way, the expansion is not so much like an amplification going outwards, but more of an embracing, going into the realms of our ability to be more interconnected within ourselves, and interconnected with our emotional stories and journeys, but then that possibility of discharge to be gradually transmuted and become integrated is one of the areas that I think the flower essences are so precious in supporting us. But what also happens in parallel is that the more this integration, this interconnectedness grows, it expands to this ability to sense in so many levels, to sense what is in the collective, to sense information of different levels coming from plants, coming from, you know, places in nature. And so it's like we grow in awareness in stages, and it happens simultaneously in many levels.
Yes.
So there's that processing, but then there's that expansion, and then there's more integration, and then, yeah.
It's like that fundamental knowing that we are everything else. And so like when we piece back a connection within us internally, it allows us to access that connection outside of ourselves as well, right? And it just
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a beautiful way of expressing that. I love looking at it like that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for seeing it so
Yeah.
vividly as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I've been sort of tapping in lately to this, almost like the astrological chart that has everything has the opposing sort of experience, right? It's the same with our emotions as well. Whatever emotion we're feeling has the opposing experience. So if we're feeling fear, when we remove that, what resides beneath it is love, right? And it's just like piecing those pieces back together. And I think, yeah, I'm just seeing it really, really beautifully in my mind.
Yeah, and in some ways, it's also the integration, because we can hold the fear, but then develop the courage and know that the fear is there to protect us. And yet we can have the courage to dare, and we can master holding the two.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I guess I don't know why, but I'm just going back to astrology again, of how it's like, kind of like mastering like the sort of like the beneficial roles of each emotion, and not falling into the lower sort of expression of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and understanding the shadow side, but being able to master it, right? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. So you are the host of Essence Circles, which is a free monthly sort of exploration of a flower and its profile and archetype. And I've been able to attend a couple of these over the last few months, and they're really beautiful. And you have so many people join in, and the energy within the space is just so beautiful to experience. It's very powerful. I'd love if you could share a little bit about your philanthropic offerings within this realm of the flower essences, and the importance that these are to you, and why you feel it important to share these.
Yeah, when I was creating the business model that I wanted, or that I felt called to bring forth, that was wanting to come to the world through me, the idea of Essence Circles came. And within that idea, one of the levels was what I've been calling open circles, which is the offering that you're referring to. And then Essence Circles also involves deepening circles for study, etc. And the open circles was this study and practice at the same time, of gathering once a month to tune into one plant archetype at a time. And I had the help of a friend who is wonderful in facilitating group dynamics. And I had this idea of how we would first look at the plant in all its details, through images, through information. And then we would discuss that. And then we would do a dive into living an attunement with that plant as a group, and then discuss that. And then at the end, share that gift of that quality of the plant with everyone who would need, from the energy that had been generated in the circle. So that came as this work was born, and I decided to begin offering it once a month in Portuguese for the Brazilian public, once a month in English for the English-speaking people. And I've been doing it since 2016. And it's just so, sometimes like this last week, I had just come from an international trip. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I should cancel. And then I thought, you know what? I want to repeat a plant that I've done early on that not many people had been able to attend. I'm going to do it anyway, And it was one of the most amazing open circles we ever had on the green nicotiana, which is the tobacco plant, in its green flower expression. It was just such a blessing to share that as a group, and the group really creates the energy. I'm just the facilitator. Yeah. This friend of mine also helped me how to really lead this facilitation in a way that really creates that sense of circle. And so everyone is invited to join. And I know people in Australia can make it. The time works out. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I actually was able to be in that call with the Nicotina, and it was so beautiful. And it's so synchronistic, of course, that I was working with wild tobacco here as an essence. I just have been working with it for the last couple of weeks. And then I got your email about, obviously it's not the exact same, but within the same family. And I got your email about the Nicotina. And yeah, I loved that within that it really bring through these same elements of the tobacco that I'm working with. So yeah, it was really powerful for me. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Beautiful. And I guess as well, it's, the flower essences have this like potential to really shift energy collectively. And so when you can offer that to a group of people and then they move through their days within that vibration and being able to share that with all the people that they touch, it's just like such a powerful way to share what needs to be, gifted within the collective at that time.
Absolutely. And I also think there is a role for people who facilitate groups or work in environments where there's a need for creating more, creating better processes, enhancing people's ability to be present, that flower essences can be used as sprays for, I've used flower essences when I had a dinner party and I was inviting guests to kind of spray the essences on the chair and on the table and on the environment before people arrive, just to create that atmosphere of, connection and sharing. And for meetings and gatherings and processes that people are going through, I think there's so much that the flower essences can offer beyond the one-to-one work. Absolutely. And of course, for situations in which people are going through processes of change and transformation, and things are emerging emotionally. This can be tracked with perhaps a succession of flower essences that can really help these processes. I see so much potential for the flower essences to be used in these ways.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's just expanding our mind to remember that so that we can more and more implement it. It brings to mind actually an experience, my family, like a separate part of my family, not myself, but my family were having a family meeting. And so my dad requested a flower essence that they all had to take before the meeting for it to go where it was meant to go. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be smooth or that it's going to be, how they want it to go, but it's going to release the resistance and the maybe reaction and stuff that's going to prevent it from where it needs to go. I think that's really beautiful.
Absolutely, because flower essences won't manipulate a situation. There's no way you can enforce a direction. But they do help processes to evolve. They help the evolving and the intelligence that is possible. I really feel that because they bring information, they awaken that ability for every system to be touched and awakened in its innate intelligence. And especially when there is attunement and resonance, then that innate intelligence is awakened and works its way through. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just kind of like getting us out of our own way, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. So I would love to hear from you. This is the last question, and I would love to hear what you think the future of flower essences hold and your personal insight into what they're going to offer for us as a collective.
Yeah, I think this last example, of hues that we were talking about, I think is one of the big ones. I think the more we continue discussing collective healing and ancestral healing, the more I think the flowers can be seen and respected as one of the tools coming from the plant realm, from plant intelligence, to touch the human realm so that it can awaken to its integration with all the realms, so that we can actually begin to work in truly evolved ways, in truly intelligent ways, because the limited intelligence of just our rational greed, let's put it that way, is taking us in directions that are being so toxic for us and for the planet. And yet there's all this information coming from the plants, through the flowers especially, and all this wisdom that people are tapping into as they become more integrated and connected, that can help us function in ways that are much more of a higher intelligence, right? And that higher intelligence being learning to function in further and deeper integration and in integrated ways, in ways that bring sanity, that bring connection, that bring collaboration, that bring co-creation.
Yes. Yes, I love it so much. And I feel exactly the same way. And it's funny, speaking of how what the flowers do for us is get us out of our own way. It's almost like the paradox is that the resistance or the hesitation between us using them as a sort of working with the flowers on a more collective scale is this resistance, our own resistance to it, right? So it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, and the more I just began reading, my husband just said, "Oh, I found a book that you might be interested in," and it's called The Light Eaters, and it's a book written by a woman who's a journalist writer, about plant intelligence.
Mm.
And so she's doing kind of a really wide research on what research there is that is newer on plant intelligence. And I think we're more and more awakening to the understanding that intelligence is not only centered in brains, that there are many other ways that intelligence manifests. And so I think this is the good news, in the face of so many levels of news that we can be very apprehensive and concerned about. But this is the good news that we can learn with and from the plants other ways of functioning. And I just look forward to more of that, and in whatever way I can be serving towards that. I'm here. I'm enlisted.
Count me in too. I did actually just think of one more question I'd love to ask of you. Do you have a favorite flower to work with?
Oh, it's not exactly. No, there's a woman who always says, "You love you and the blue flowers." I always think of you and the blue flower when blue flowers show up. So I do love those. The Borage family, the Mountain Forget-Me-Not is one of my favorites, but I love the irises. I love all of them. So no, I don't have one.
Yes, that's fine. I don't think anyone ever has just one.
It's and I'm fascinated. Like this, just yesterday, I was showing a client the rose cone flower from the Australian essences. And I mean, it's a stunning plant, and all these plants that grow in Australia, I'm just in love with all of them. Every one that I start looking at, I'm just totally fascinated by them.
Yeah, they're very different here, aren't they? But in saying that, I love seeing across the world and within America and everywhere, just the wildflowers that do grow. I think they're so bountiful and everywhere, and I love seeing people sharing about them. So I think it's what is distant to us is always intriguing.
When I was doing that small moment of silence before we started our conversation, I started seeing these groups of flowers from around the world really joyful of coming together.
I love that. The flowers are calling to reconnect too.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, this has been such a beautiful conversation. I'd love to ask if there's anything else you would like to share, as if there's anything coming to you that you feel called to share as well.
Oh, no, just really share from my heart, my enthusiasm, my passion. I'll just say to people, I've been in this. I started studying the flower essences in 1988. That's when I got my first flower essence kit. And it never stops enchanting me. So this is a path that just keeps on giving. And it's always fascinating. It's always fresh. It's always beautiful. So if you're inspired to follow this path, go for it, because it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. And I hope that I know that in another, 25 years time, I'll still feel the same. Oh, it's gorgeous. Well, thank you so much for all of the wisdom and experiences and insights you've shared with us today. If anyone listening would like to find you and your offerings, where can they do that?
Yeah, well, I'm in three places at this present time. So Essence Mentoring is my website for one-to-one work. And there they can get on my list to receive notifications on the open circles. And a lot of my teaching work is now coming through the School for Flower Essence Studies, so floweressencestudies.com, where there's a lot of really rich teaching experiences being shared. Some of them are courses that I teach on my own. Some of them are courses and also programs that I do together with my colleagues, Kathleen and Rokana, who also have the Flower Essence podcast. So those are the best places. Essence Circles is also a website that I have for courses, but there's not so much newer stuff there as there is in Flower Essence Studies and Essence Mentoring. Yeah.
Beautiful. And I'll share them in the notes below if anyone would like to find them as well. Ruth, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I'm sure everyone is going to just love this conversation. I really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Thank you, Abby, for the work that you are doing in the world. I'm just so appreciative. I loved being here.
Thank you so much.